Hey you guys, welcome to Little Pug Games and welcome to today's episode. Today we're going to go over how to create your character controller for a top-down view game. So you'll be able to create character movement like you see right here in Nuclear Throne, or you can also think games like League of Legends where you have that top-down view and you can move your character around, or Binding of Isaac is another good example. So we're going to go over a couple things today. We're going to go over how to use the rigid body and the rigid body 2D and how to control a character through using that component. And we're also going to go over how to break up sprite sheets and how to create your own animations. So this is an introductory level tutorial. So without further ado, let's get started. I have Unity open up right here, and we're going to create a new project. We're just going to call it top-down game. It's going to be 2D, and we are going to create the project. So I have a little script called make game folders, and it'll just create the folders inside the project. That way I don't have to deal with it. So here we are. We have a blank Unity scene, and let's get started. Let's go. Let's make this a little bigger. So we're gonna go into our sprites, and first thing we want to do is add some sprites to our game. We're gonna import them, and so these are both pixel sprites. So when you work with pixelated or pixel sprites, you want to set the filter mode to point, and you want to set the compression to none. And we want to apply, and we want to do the same thing with the chicken sprites. Multiple, point, and none. Apply. We're going to go to the sprite editor. We're going to slice these by grid cell size, and we know these are, so I made these 32 by 32, so we're just going to put 32 width, 32 height, and slice these. And if you notice, they are sliced in the manner that we want them to. We'll also do the same thing with chicken sprites. And the one thing about this one is that this one's actually 16 by 16. So I'll do that here. And we'll slice them up. And here we go. Alright, so first things first, we want to create an idle animation for our character. And let me just change the main camera color to white. Don't really like the black. And that's actually too bright. Alright, so we're going to create our idle animation. And go to animations, and we'll just call this guy dude idle animation because he's just idling. And we're gonna go to the run cycle. We're gonna so when you make an animation in Unity, you can just drag and drop all the sprites that make up that animation, and then you can name it. It'll create a controller for you, an animation controller for you, but you can just delete the ones that you don't need. So this one you'll see right here. So dude running, I'll name this dude running. I'll put it into animations. I'll save it. And then if you notice, it created two controllers for me. So it made a dude idle, so for the first one here, and then it also created a running controller for the running animation, but we only need one, so we're gonna delete this one that we don't need. Delete. And we're gonna rename this to character animation controller. We're going to put this animation controller into our animations controller folder, and then here in the animator we're going to add the running animation. The way this works is this is the animator, and it basically is a finite state machine. This means is that at every frame, every update, it's in one of these states. So it's in one of these states. So what we want to do is, if the guy is idling, then he needs to be in the idle animation here. But if he's moving, we want him to go into the running animation. So we can do this with a parameter, and we'll just name this moving. So what happens is we're going to create a transition into running. So transition is going to have a condition, and the condition will be if the boolean called moving is true, then he's going to go into the running state. And then we're also going to create another transition that goes back to idle, and this will be the opposite. If moving is false, then we want the character to be in the idle state, and there is no exit time for either of these. So we're going to remove this exit time, and we're just going to delete, or not delete it, but just shorten it down to basically 0. Alright, so we have this, and this is our idle character, and we are going to name this player. We are going to delete this game object, which has our running animation, and it's gone. Alright, so now we have this right now, and it's just a character in idle position. So when I click the keys, nothing happens. And so our problem now is we need to create a character controller that allows us to control our character. And we're going to do that by creating a simple script. And we're just going to name it, since this is a top-down character controller, we'll name it top-down player controller. Top-down player movement. How about that? That's better. Alright, so top-down player movement. We're gonna give it a sec, and let's go back to Unity just for a sec. So if you notice, it has a sprite render and an animator. For our character controller, for our movement, basically our top-down player movement script, we also want to add a rigidbody 2D. So rigidbody 2D is basically adds physics to this object, and we can give it different parameters like velocity, we can give it force. So we're going to use this to give this object a velocity in the direction that we want, and that direction is going to be dependent on our arrows and what we're clicking. So we're going to set this to kinematic, and you should use kinematic when you don't want it to collide with other objects. So if you're only going to be controlling the physics with your scripts, then put it in kinematic, in a kinematic body type. So we have that set up. We're going to take this script and add it to player. We are going to open this guy up, and we're going to get started. We're going to delete these things that we don't need, and we're going to start off by creating a couple of public variables. And so if we think about it, we want our character to have a specific velocity. So we're going to have a float called speed, and this this will be his maximum speed when he's moving. We are also going to grab our rigid body. So private rigid body 2D rigid body. We're gonna create our start, and we're gonna create our update as well. The other thing we need will be the animator, so we're gonna have that here as well. So private animator. And so when in Unity, when we want to grab components from a game object, we use the get component method, and we do this like so. So we'll say get component, and we want to grab the animator component. So we'll grab it there, and we'll do the same for the rigid body. (2D) and set that up. Alright, so first things first, you guys. So we want to grab the controllers that the player is using at that moment. So we want to grab any joystick or arrow key presses that we see the player using, and we can do that by using the get access method from the input class. Get input from player will be our first step. We'll create two floats, X movement, and this will be equal to input dot get axis, and we'll do this. So this is the horizontal axis that we want to get the input from. So when the character is moving the A or D or the left or right arrow keys or the joystick, it'll grab that information and pass it down into this method. So we'll do the same for the y-axis. So this will be vertical. Alright, so we have X movement and Y movement. There's another method called getAxisRaw. You guys should look that up. This basically applies no smoothing to presses, so it's either 0 or 1. And the difference between getAxis and getAxisRaw is getAxis gives you a smoothed out set of values from 0 to 1, so everything inclusive. So it makes for a little smoother type of movement. And so, okay, so we have our X movement and our Y movement. So now what we want to do is total movement, or we'll just name this movement because this is what it is, it's movement. So we're going to set this as a vector 2, new vector 2, and X movement, X movement and Y movement. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Not yet. Whoops, my bad. This is a vector 2, you guys. I'm sorry. So there's two parts to our movement, X and Y. So the other thing we want to do is set this to normalized. Normalized. And so what normalized does is it grabs a vector and basically shrinks it down to a magnitude of 1. And why do we want this? Because now with our normalized vector, we can just multiply it by the speed. So if you think about it, at all times our character will be moving at this speed. So now what we can do is say rigid body dot velocity is equal to movement. And let's just check it really quick. So let's see if there are any errors. And there's something up. Alright, so the animator is not used yet, but that's fine. Ooh, not working. All right, so we set the speed to 0, so obviously he's not going to be moving pretty quickly. So let's set it to 4. And hopefully he should be moving this time around. All right, cool. So you can see him move. And so right now, if I let the button go, he keeps moving for like half a second. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studios and just use raw. And you guys should give this a quick test. You'll be able to see the difference really quickly. So let's test it out again. Alright, so now the movement is very sharp and it's very snappy. So as soon as you let go of the buttons, he stops. So I like it a little more. And so we have the character moving, but what about the next step? We want him to go into his running animation if he's moving. So we'll go back into Visual Studios and we'll set that up. So go back into Visual Studios and we have our animator here. And remember that parameter we created called moving? So what we want to do now is if movement dot magnitude, so this grabs the vector and it gives us the total magnitude of that vector. So it tells us how long that vector is. So if movement.magnitude is greater than 0, but since this is a float, we'll use mathf.epsilon, then we know that that the character is moving. We'll say animator.setBool moving, and we'll set this to true. Else if, or else, that's the only other thing that can be happening. Else we'll set the Boolean to false. And false. Alright, so if we go back to Unity, let's see what this looks like. Alright, so he's moving and he's animating now, but do you guys see a problem? So the problem is that even if you're moving to the left, the character is still facing the right. So that's the last problem we need to fix for him to be moving. And we'll only set it in movement. So if he's moving, then we'll set it up. So let's grab one other thing, you guys. I'm sorry. So private, we'll grab the sprite render, and the sprite render has a pretty cool little parameter. So sprite capital render. So we'll grab the component, get component, and sprite render. And right here, so if our character is moving, then what we want to do is if X movement is greater than 0, so he'll be facing the right, then sprite render, so this is the little cool parameter I wanted to show you guys. So flip X is equal to false. Else flip X is equal to true. So if he's facing the left, then we'll set it to true. So if you notice, this is completely dependent on the X movement. So if X movement is positive and moving to the right, we do not want to flip the sprite. So let's take a look at what that looks like. If you go to the player's sprite renderer, and if you click flip X, you can see him flip around. So let's test this right now. There you go. So he's running and he stops. He does everything as expected. So awesome. We have a cool little character moving around and cool little character controller. So yeah, this is how to create your own character controller for a top-down view game. And in the next episode, we'll cover how to add a couple cool things. So I'm going to create a bunch of chickens and they'll follow you, and then your job will be to corral them into an area. And once these chickens are in the area, they'll stop. So in the next episode, we'll cover how to add game objects that can follow you, and we'll create that in the next episode. So I hope you guys learned something cool, and I hope you guys learned how to create a cool top-down view character controller, and let me know what you guys end up doing with it. And I'll post the code up on the description, and I'll have it so you can download the project. And I'll see you guys next time. You guys have a great day.